Okay, we'll see how this goes. About 3 months ago, I went in to get a regular appointment for my OBGYN and was pretty sure that I had been feeling a fibroid in my abdomen and I wanted that to get looked at. So scheduled to get an ultrasound. That ultrasound led to getting an MRI. And I got an MRI about a month ago and then got the results back from all the things. And they were like, yes, it's a fibroid. It's fine. But one of them, there's two. One of them is the size of my fist, which is not an insignificant size. So most women have fibroids or will have fibroids at some point in their life. They're benign. It's not a huge issue unless it is a huge issue. They can create abnormally large amounts of bleeding, extensive bleeding, like for months at a time sometimes. They can cause a lot of pain. They can create kind of debilitating pain, specifically around a menstrual cycle. They can make it difficult for people to get pregnant. There's a slew of things that can be challenges. None of those things had been part of my challenge. So I have had very regular and relatively heavy bleeding my entire life since I was 11. The pain was not debilitating, although sometimes it was, but not more than what any other cycling woman kind of goes through. So this kind of idea for me about learning more about my reproductive health and hormone balancing had to do largely because I've never really explored going deep into my hormone cycling. I'm learning a lot right now. So I'm sharing information about where I'm at in my learning and what I'm kind of embarking on. So I'm currently 43. I'm in a state of perimenopause, also known as menopausal transition. Most women start that around 40. Some women start that earlier, like in their late 30s. But it happens to all people that were born into a female body, is my understanding. Maybe that's not true. That's my understanding. It is a change in your hormone cycling specifically, and it can throw everything out of whack if it's not supported properly. If you're like your cycling and your hormones are not being supported by your environment and the foods you eat and all of those things. So I've kind of entered into this space because my understanding and also some of my intuition has led me into these spaces of like, I think this might be part of the reason why I have a fibroid, and I want to better support my body in the cycling that it already is doing right now. So my hormone cycles. All right. So there is a woman named Dr. Mindy Pelz who I kind of found through podcasting, through like endless searching of how people are dealing with hormone regulation to support people in perimenopause, and also to figure out if this might be a path towards shrinking my fibroids naturally, because the alternative is to have it removed, or to have a hysterectomy, or I think those are kind of the two options. And I would really love to keep all of my organs, and I'm hoping to be able to shrink this naturally. So we shall see. Time will tell. There are 4 phases that she talks about. Day 1 is the start of your period, when you start bleeding. And so we're looking at this kind of cycle through what typically is like a 28-day cycle, although some people will have longer or shorter cycles. And this correlates to the moon, if you all are not familiar with that. And it's 2 phases in here. It's both your menstruation, your bleeding, as well as the follicular phase. Then the next little section is ovulation. So you're going through ovulation, and that lasts for about 4 days. The next phase in 2 different sections. So phase 3 and 4 is the luteal phase. This first phase is estrogen building. Then you move into progesterone building. Then you move back into estrogen building, and then again into progesterone building. So over these the course of 28 days, your body is going through 4 different cycles of what hormones they're building. But she's talking about higher protein, lower carbohydrate, really focusing on that during the estrogen building phase, and really focusing on whole, like good carbohydrates, more of that, and less focus on protein during the progesterone building phase. This last phase that lasts about 9 days, it's the progesterone building that links back up to your first day of your next cycle. And if you get this wrong, you can suffer greatly in it. And so the idea is like, can we do the things to support our body's want to cycle through hormones? And I'm putting a lot of emphasis on this because she talks about how dire it is to kind of screw this part up. She talks about fasting and going into a ketogenic state as a way for your body to naturally heal itself. These are options to fast. Do not do that here. She's saying this again, if you like go through fasting, this is a really critical point in your cycle to not do that. So she's like, great, do that here if you want. Do that here a little bit if you want. Do that here if you want. If you do this here, if you fast during this cycle, you'll screw up your whole hormonal balance because your body does not have enough glucose to and progesterone to actually shed in your next cycle. So if you're born with a male body, your hormones cycle every 24 hours, which is very different than a 28-day cycle. Okay, so let me zoom out a little bit. So this is kind of the chart that I put together, not just from Mindy Pelz. This is from a compilation of many different people, but this is kind of where this is the first place that I landed that I was like, oh, this is great. I need to really go deep into this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? These are the 4 phases of a 28-day ish day menstrual cycle. And this is kind of this broken down for me. I just like put this together for my own cheat sheet. Is 1 and 3 that's much more about like high protein diet. It is estrogen building, right? In both of these phases, more of a high protein ketogenic diet. That if you're not properly shedding the amount of progesterone that your body needed to be able to do this properly, it throws your thyroid off. And so this connection between the two is critical for making sure that the hormones that we're building up are also being released from our body. And if they're not properly released, they start storing up in other parts of our body, one of them throwing our thyroid off. Okay, so these 2 phases really important, but these 2 phases are really about, we can push our bodies a little bit further. Like if we're needing to push and kind of go, we can do fasting for longer periods of time if that is an option or if you're interested in that. And you're really focusing on higher protein content and lower glycemic index spiking foods. Phase 2 is ovulation, and it's about 5 days. So we're about 10 days into the cycle, and on kind of day 11 through 15. So for those 5 days, it's progesterone building. It's about consuming more healthy carbs, not focusing so much on protein because we need more glucose in our blood and in our diet to properly make progesterone. Progesterone needs that. These are where like the cravings come from that I think almost everyone has experienced that. This is when we're like super shiny and our hair feels great and our skin is glowing and like all the things feel great. Lots of motivation and drive. It's kind of a magical phase. During ovulation, it is the peak of estrogen and testosterone in your body. So this is like the highest point of both estrogen and testosterone. There's a little progesterone, but it's not like the focus of this area. It's progesterone building, but you're not quite peaking, right? This is estrogen peaking and testosterone peaking. Okay, so then 3rd phase, estrogen building, nothing really unique in this phase. It's similar to this first kind of 10-day phase in terms of the diet and what you're looking at, but you can fast longer. Hormones dip during these 4 days. It's only 4 days. And the idea is like you can kind of power up and kind of build up some momentum. But as estrogen building, you want to focus on more protein, less carbohydrate. This is the fourth stage. It's last 9 days. So these are big chunks. This is like the vast majority of the cycle lands in these two phases. Do not fuck this up. If you get this wrong, you will set your whole next cycle up to be fully off. And if this keeps happening, where you're throwing this off and you're not supporting yourself in these phases either, you're like, your body is in kind of mayhem of not being able to do the things that it needs to do to function well in these bodies that have reproductive organs. This fourth stage is all about nurture, resting more, listening to your body, slowing down. Healthy carbohydrates to be able to make progesterone. This is like the progesterone building, like the focus is progesterone building for 9 days. This is oftentimes when I think most of us have cravings because we're trying to bring our glucose up to properly make progesterone. We cannot properly make progesterone if our glucose levels are too low or if we're too stressed out. So progesterone is asking us to bring up our glucose. Bringing glucose up allows us to bring cortisol down. And if we are not bringing cortisol down, it like creates mayhem in our body. We know this. Progesterone sheds the uterine lining. So that's like, again, if you don't have the proper progesterone built up in your system, you can't properly shed what's needed to be shed. So the body goes into ketosis when it has a rest. So when you're going through some kind of fast, which is why it's called breakfast, because it's literally breaking a fast. So it's a period of time where you're not ingesting food and you're not consuming anything that's going to spike your glucose levels. That when your body goes into that state, it first starts to pull sugars out, like excess sugars from your blood, then it starts to pull out of your liver, then it starts to pull out of your muscles, then fat, then brain, then eyes. And these are good things. You want these things to be pulled out. But to do it in a way that is supporting the cycle, right? That it's, you're not just like trying to pull out stored glucose when you're in this fourth state, which is progesterone building, because we actually really need those added sugars and added glucose. So that's kind of the gist of what's happening. This is what I'm going through, and this is why I have this. This is the continuous glucose monitor, so I can understand what's happening with my personal glucose levels.